Hello to everyone who has tuned back to our channel. This is very exciting. The channel is growing and everyone is learning more about cognitive biases. So in this episode, it's going to be our first episode where we touch on a cognitive bias in depth. And we're going to talk about the confirmation bias. So what is the confirmation bias? To start us off, the confirmation bias is a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that affirms one's prior beliefs or hypotheses. So let's give an example to better illustrate. That was a lot of harsh wording. So let's use the example of building an experiment. Let's say you want to test something. It can be anything that you want to imagine. So let's say you're testing the effectiveness of different brands of laundry detergent. And let's say throughout your entire life, you use the same laundry detergent. You just love Tide. So of course you have a special place in your heart for Tide. And you think that out of every single laundry detergent in the world, Tide is the best, by far, no competition. So going into your experiment, when you're analyzing the way the stains have been removed by different laundry detergents, you have a certain bias and inclination towards Tide because it's going to confirm your hypothesized idea. So this is going to be the best illustration for, real life that we can give for this example. An important thing to remember, though, is that the confirmation bias is not to be confused with the Barnum Effect. The Barnum Effect is a tendency for people to accept information that is supposedly tailored to them as accurate, even when the descriptions are vague enough to apply to most people. So the best illustration for this is horoscopes. When a horoscope says, oh, it's Tuesday, and because you're a Libra, you woke up feeling a little bit tired, but also not tired. Descriptions like that, of course, anyone is going to be able to fit into them. And with the Barnum Effect, you place yourself into those descriptions and you think that they're tailored towards you when really they're super vague. So this can be confused, the confirmation bias can be confused with the Barnum Effect because they're both related to one's tendency to accept certain information. However, the difference is that with the confirmation bias, the information presented is specific, not vague. So with the confirmation bias, as we saw in our experiment, the information is specific, meaning there will be an end to the experiment where one of the laundry detergents will be deemed as the best stain remover. Whereas with the Barnum Effect, the information presented is so vague that there's not one clear answer. So one falling victim to the confirmation bias is simply more likely to choose the option that favors their initial idea. Whereas the Barnum Effect presents very vague information that can go either way. Very vague, very ambiguous. So now we have to look at, why is it important that we combat the confirmation bias, and what can we do to combat the confirmation bias? So what are we going to do, and why does it matter? So the reason why it's important to combat the confirmation bias is because it can lead to some pretty trivial to serious consequences. So for something trivial, anything can be fall victim to the confirmation bias that doesn't really matter. So let's say a person has a belief that left-handed people are more creative than right-handed people. And then let's say that they, meet a person who is left-handed and happens to be more creative. But they also meet 500 other people that are right-handed and are more creative than left-handed. In this case, the person would pick out that left-handed person that is more creative out of the other 500 right-handed people in order to further their previous hypothesis that left-handed people are more creative. Something more serious would be if we're conducting a very serious U.S. Government scientific lab experiment, maybe to develop some sort of medicinal drug that needs to be distributed to the population, and there's a scientist that has a hypothesis about what will end up happening in this experiment and what they will end up developing, that could definitely skew their data in a very detrimental way. Of course, we have to hope that this doesn't really happen because scientists take oaths, but the confirmation bias definitely exists. So we have to be careful about this. And to combat this, we can look for disconfirming evidence and play devil's advocate against ourselves. So, in other words, always look for reasons why your initial idea may be wrong in order to accurately make a final decision. Don't be afraid to prove yourself wrong. So, stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much for watching.